get 5 people into a room with, you know, theater blacks with no money, no tech, and just make different spaces, make fantastical alternate realities. There was a company called the Company of Little Ioces that did cut-down versions of Shakespeare, and they would tour it to libraries in Santa Cruz County. And my mother started taking me from, I think, when I was 4 or 5 or 6 years old. And I remember by the time I was 8, I was in that company. And from what she tells me, that was absolutely my decision. She had no kind of, it was a shock to her when I was like, I want to do this thing. You start because you're 6 years old and it's really fun and you get an adrenaline rush kind of standing in front of a group of people and you like memorizing lines. And then as you kind of continue to do this thing, like any form or relationship, it gains depth. And it kind of carves its way into you as well. And so the deeper you go into this form, the deeper you can go into yourself, the deeper you can go into your relationships. And I think I'm just at that point with theater where it's that thing that I have done my whole life. It's amazing how your ambition does change as you go through. When I first started out, just making a show that was getting staged and seen, just that was exhilarating. And I think that I was weirdly lucky in that everybody that I was with was working at my level. I didn't ever have that thing where I was assisting somebody and going, well, they're so resourced. Like, I never had that. I just kind of was like, yeah, this is great. It's great. We're rehearsing in my kitchen and now we're showing it in front of 4 people at Brighton Fringe. Amazing, you know, and everything that we did had that kind of excitement around it. And a lot of my very close relationships and people that I'm mentoring now are graduating into this, quote, impossible landscape, where they kind of look at me and they go, well, you have a theater company, but you came into this 5, 6, 7, 10 years before I did, and how in this landscape can we get anything off the ground now? And I think that that's absolutely true. And I actually think that there's 2 things that you can do when you're faced with an impossible situation. One is you can go, well, this whole thing is broken, so now I'm free. I'm free of having to compete for that next level up, you know, like it's the cult of the kind of the next hot young thing. So like, you know, that little residency or that little assistantship or that little, you know, £3,000 bursary or whatever it is, you know, you're free. Because if you get that, you're still gonna be working within a broken system. And I'm now working with artists who have been doing this for a decade and they're looking at the regional touring model and they're like, this is a broken model. So you can kind of, yes, you can always create within these systems that are imperfect, but it's imperfect enough that you can also go, I'm going to do something completely different. I think that the greatest successes that you see in this industry are not people who followed all of the rules and not people who kind of chased the opportunities. It's the people who kind of went, I'm going to create an opportunity and name it after my company. You know what I mean? The moment you do that, you flip it. That energy exists. That can be a positive thing and that can be a negative thing, depending on what part of that, you know, that tide you decide to place yourself in. There's a consistent currency. There's a consistently recognized currency. There's certain people whose work everybody is meant to follow. And there's this homogenous directionality to everybody's focus. And for me, as a young artist, it was crucial, actually, that I step out of the context of UK theatre regularly. So I went to Rwanda, I went to Lebanon, I like taking yourself out of the situation where everybody around you is talking about what the National is up to is incredibly important, because you kind of go, oh my God, there are people who exist who don't know who these people are, and actually their lives are really dynamic and interesting, and their problems are worthwhile, and you know what I mean? Like there are other perspectives on the world, and I think that obviously you enter with your own voice and your own perspective. So ideally, that's the thing that should balance you: yourself, your peers, your tastes, things that you find important in the world. But it is incredibly difficult to maintain that sense of perspective when you're in it all the time. And so for me, and this is just me, taking myself so often out of this context means that I wasn't kind of always building here. But I'm really grateful that I did that, because then I'm not just kind of like tuning in to kind of the needs and the spiraling direction of this particular kind of very specific, very niche little world, and then just kind of getting sucked into all of its kind of values and hierarchies. So yeah, just exposing yourself to other contexts I think is super important. Keep the theater that you want to make separate from the idea of yourself as a theater maker and the financial incentives around that. Whatever it is that you're dreaming of artistically, there will always be a way to get there. If you let that get wrapped up in, and I want to have a salary of this, that, and the other, and I want to have a certain kind of lifestyle, if you focus on anything other than just the work itself, then you start to feel like you're living in an impossible system.